Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, left behind visions that unsettled the comfortable certainties of life and death. In his trance readings, he revealed a haunting truth. Nearly 80% of souls, upon leaving the body, do not remember who they truly are. Within 2 days of physical death, what Cayce described as the stage of the real death, the vast majority of souls fall into a strange forgetfulness. They drift like travelers who have lost their maps, unable to recall their purpose, their lessons, even their divine origin. Why would this happen? Cayce explained that memory is not anchored in the brain, but in the spirit itself. When the cord between body and soul is cut, the awareness of eternity should open wide. Yet, because of lives filled with distractions, selfishness, or refusal to grow spiritually, many souls step into the beyond like sleepwalkers. They carry forward only fragments, shadows, emotions detached from their source. And in this forgetting, they wander. For Cayce, this was not a punishment, but a consequence. Just as the body suffers when neglected, so the soul suffers when ignored. If during life we build no bridge toward God, no channel of meditation, prayer, or service, then at death we face a silence so deep that it erases the memory of who we are. He often warned, "The life you live each day is the preparation for death." For Cayce, every moment of kindness, every act of selflessness, every time we turned inward to seek God's presence, we were engraving memory into the soul. That engraving survives beyond death. Without it, the soul slips into confusion. And here lies the question that Cayce asked again and again: how can we end this forgetting? How can humanity awaken so that memory does not vanish after 2 days? He believed the key was within reach of every person, not in churches alone, not in rituals alone, but in the simple and powerful act of living with spiritual awareness daily. For those who practice this, memory after death was not a blank page, but a radiant book already written. This was the first step of Cayce's vision, a call to awaken before death arrives. Edgar Cayce often spoke of those crucial 2 days after physical death. To most people, death is thought of as an instant, a sudden crossing. But Cayce described it as a process, a passage layered with states of awareness. In those first 48 hours, the soul hovers near the earth plane, sensing both the release of the body and the pull of a new reality. For a small number of awakened souls, this is a time of clarity. They watch their loved ones, they feel the prayers spoken for them, and they remember their spiritual journey with astonishing detail. They realize, "I am more alive than ever." But for nearly 80%, Cayce warned, those 2 days are veiled in silence. Instead of clarity, there is confusion. Instead of light, there is a dim haze where thoughts slip away. The soul tries to recall faces, names, lessons, but they vanish like smoke in the wind. This, Cayce explained, is the result of neglecting the spiritual self while in the body. Imagine a traveler who ignored all maps during life. When the journey begins after death, he has no direction. The 2 days become a blur, and when the final separation from the body occurs, the moment Cayce called the real death, the soul is left without memory of its origin. It knows it exists, but not who it truly is. Cayce insisted this forgetfulness was not eternal damnation. It was more like falling asleep without dreams, a pause in awareness. The danger, however, is that such souls are drawn again and again into cycles of rebirth, repeating mistakes because they cannot remember what they were meant to learn. Yet he also revealed a way to change this destiny. Prayer, meditation, acts of service, all these leave impressions upon the soul. They are like threads of light that survive the crossing. With them, the 2 days are no longer empty. Instead, they become luminous, filled with recognition and peace. Cayce's voice was urgent. Do not wait until death to awaken. Awaken now. He saw that humanity's greatest tragedy was not physical death itself, but spiritual amnesia, and he believed it could be ended. This was the mystery he sought to unfold, step by step, in his readings, how the soul could remember. Cayce described the soul as a traveler carrying a book. This book is not written on paper, but in spirit. Every thought, every deed, every act of love or hatred becomes a line in it. When death arrives, the body is left behind, but the book should remain open. In it lies the memory of all that has been. Yet for most souls, the book is closed too soon. The first 2 days pass, and instead of holding this sacred record, they drift without recognition. Cayce saw this as the great tragedy of humankind, forgetting the very lessons it had worked so hard to learn. In his readings, he explained that the book of memory is written daily, through choices both small and great. The kindness shown to a stranger, the forgiveness offered to an enemy, the silent prayer in the middle of the night, all of these engrave lines into the soul's record. These survive beyond death. But when life is lived in selfishness, materialism, or indifference, the pages remain blank. And when death comes, the book is too thin to guide the soul. Thus, the forgetting begins. Cayce insisted this was why life matters so deeply. It is not just a test, not just a waiting room for eternity. It is the very workshop where memory is forged. Mind is the builder, he said again and again. The mind builds the soul's record, shaping what will survive after death. Those who cultivate love, compassion, and faith awaken to find their book wide open, glowing with meaning. They remember who they are, where they have been, and what lies ahead. These souls walk confidently into the realms beyond, unafraid, for their record is alive within them. Those who neglect the spirit awaken to silence. They feel the pull of eternity, but cannot read their own story. Lost in forgetfulness, they stumble forward, seeking another chance, another life, to rewrite what was left undone. And so, Cayce's call was not only about preparing for death, but about living with purpose. The way you treat others, the way you honor God, the way you align your mind, all of it ensures that the book will be open when you need it most. The question was clear: will your soul's book be blank or full of light? Edgar Cayce often said, "You are a soul. You merely inhabit a body." This truth was central to his readings. The body dies, the mind quiets, but the soul continues. The great challenge is whether it continues in light or in forgetfulness. For Cayce, memory after death was not an accident, but the result of choices made during life. He revealed 3 keys to remembering: prayer, meditation, and service. Together, these formed the foundation of spiritual awareness, engraving the record of the soul so deeply that not even death could erase it. Prayer, Cayce explained, is the soul's conversation with God. It lifts thought above the material world and strengthens the bond with the divine. Souls who prayed regularly carried that bond into death like a shining thread, guiding them through the 2 days of silence. Meditation was, in Cayce's words, listening to God. Where prayer is speaking, meditation is receiving. By quieting the restless mind and entering the inner silence, the soul learns to recognize its eternal nature. Those who practiced meditation during life awakened after death with clarity, remembering not only their present journey, but glimpses of past lives as well. Service was the third and perhaps most powerful key. Cayce insisted that no act of kindness is ever lost. When we serve others, even in small ways, we align ourselves with God's purpose. These acts become living memory in the soul. In death, they shine like stars, reminding the spirit of its true nature. Cayce's vision was not about avoiding death, it was about transforming it. He saw that if humanity embraced these practices, the tragedy of forgetting could end. Instead of 80% of souls wandering in confusion, there would be remembrance, recognition, and peace. But he warned, these keys are not to be stored away for tomorrow. They must be lived daily. To pray once at death's door, to meditate only in desperation, to serve only when convenient. This was not enough. The engraving of the soul's memory must be carved every day, with every thought and deed. For Cayce, death was not the end, but the great unveiling. And only those who lived with awareness would step into that unveiling with eyes wide open. After the 2 days of transition, Cayce explained, the soul steps into what he called the real death. This is not destruction, but the moment of separation, when the body is finally left behind and the soul enters the higher realms. Here, memory becomes either the soul's greatest strength or its deepest loss. For those who carried prayer, meditation, and service within them, the crossing is luminous. They awaken in a realm of light, greeted by guides, loved ones, and teachers who help them remember the path they have walked across lifetimes. To these souls, death is not a door closing, but a veil lifting. They recall lessons, recognize faces, and understand the meaning of their journey. The memory of the soul is alive, and they walk confidently into what Cayce described as the halls of learning and the spheres of growth. But for the majority, the 80% who neglected the spiritual life, this stage is far more uncertain. Without memory, they awaken in a twilight state. They feel the presence of light, but cannot grasp it. They sense the pull of eternity, but do not remember why. To them, the halls of learning seem distant, veiled in mist. They linger, confused, until the natural law of reincarnation calls them again to another earthly life. Cayce described this as a kind of judgment, not imposed by God, but by the soul itself. The record is already written. What you have built in thought and deed becomes your own witness. The realms you enter reflect the vibration of your soul. If you lived with kindness, you are drawn to kindness. If you lived in selfishness, you awaken in shadows of the same. This is why Cayce urged humanity to live deliberately. Death does not erase responsibility. The universe, he said, is lawful, just, and merciful. Every choice echoes into eternity, shaping what the soul will face when the veil is lifted. Yet even in forgetfulness, the soul is never abandoned. Cayce insisted that God's love surrounds every spirit, guiding even the most confused back toward the light. The difference is how long the journey takes. With memory, the path is clear. Without it, the soul must stumble again and again until it learns to remember. And so Cayce's question grows sharper. Will you awaken in light or in shadow? Edgar Cayce never spoke of death as an end. To him, it was a doorway into a greater life. The tragedy was not death itself, but arriving at that doorway unprepared, stripped of memory, wandering without recognition of the soul's true nature. That, he said, was the fate of nearly 80% of humanity, and it did not have to be so. His message was urgent. Awaken now. The end of forgetting is not found in rituals reserved for the dying, nor in last-minute pleas at the edge of the grave. It is found in the way we live each day. Each thought, each act, each moment is a thread woven into the tapestry of the soul. When death comes, that tapestry either shines with patterns of light or remains blank. Cayce's readings made it clear that the power to remember lies in our hands. Prayer connects the soul to the eternal source. Meditation quiets the restless mind and lets us hear God's voice. Service engraves love so deeply into the spirit that it cannot be forgotten. Together, these three keys build the bridge that carries memory safely beyond death's silence. But Cayce also issued a warning. The modern world, with its noise, distractions, and obsession with material things, tempts humanity to sleep. People rush through life without asking who they truly are. They chase possessions, not realizing they cannot be carried across the threshold. They cling to the temporary, while neglecting the eternal. And so, when the body falls, they awaken in confusion, lost in the very silence they created. The way out, Cayce insisted, is simple but demanding. Live with awareness. Treat others as reflections of the divine. Seek God not in fear, but in love. Build habits of the soul that will endure beyond the body. For in doing so, you ensure that when the 2 days arrive, when the real death takes place, you will not forget. You will awaken in light, with memory intact, continuing your journey with clarity. Edgar Cayce's vision is not one of despair, but of hope. Humanity does not have to wander in forgetfulness. The choice belongs to each of us. The question is not whether death will come, it will. The question is, when it does, will you remember who you are? You've just walked with Edgar Cayce through the forgotten truths of the soul. But remember, this is only the beginning. There are still mysteries waiting, answers hidden in the silence beyond death, and revelations that could change the way you see life itself. If you want to uncover them with us, subscribe now and join this journey. Don't let the truth slip away into forgetfulness. Click subscribe, turn on the bell, and awaken with us before it's too late.